What is normal now? Is it 4 months of back-to-back rains? Or is normal half the amount of rainfall? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Hindi me tuan nan lo kawat kanaro na bay jangan nga sina ka-spoon na ngayon na may kiniyay rin kay saksi ngayon ibon nang na ilang feel sad.
Alors la mer a pris une partie de la maison.
الاجتماعية وكل شيء من بعد قلنا علاش ما نحسنوش الدخل ديال هذا البحر هذا.
Fish farming, it is a sustainable use of land and it can stand floods and drought.
যখন মাছ জগৎ থেকে আস্তে আস্তে মাছ কম হয়ে যাচ্ছে তখন পরস্পর
kura mena ka biro dala na kata sa to position moro ma ka biro godo to pikongo choki mondo mi picnic bamia na dia sa to site moro kama na ya kumi
Aron tiran na yung kani ibugira mera usu sa tayo ke to ahora que akunan nangare kiyay.
Y mi trabajo consiste en el acondicionamiento de las reforestaciones, esa oportunidad tan grande de trabajar.
Manfaat ini adalah untuk menangkap sedimentasi agar sedimentasi tertangkap di belakangnya dan akan terendap sehingga tumpukan itu menjadi sedimen yang kuat sehingga banyak mangrove yang tumbuh di belakangnya.
Civil defense रो मानको 4 दिन रो ट्रेनिंग दै छथि से ट्रेनिंग रे हमको विभिन्न उद्धार कार्य विषय रे सिखा जाय छी.
ama fazer tudo para mesmo para segurar para que a água não venha estragar de novo. A minha vida já trouxe mudança agora.
El efecto del cambio climático ha podido aminorarse con estos trabajos que se están realizando en la comunidad y desde luego los beneficios también son globales para el país y para el mundo.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to the 8th and penultimate episode of the Youth for Climate Live series. Our theme today is driving adaptation and resilience. And as you can see from the video that was just screened, adaptation can take many forms, and people all over the world are already building resilient communities. This is such an important part of the climate conversation, and we're so glad you can join us today. I'm your co-host, Ahmed Badr.
And I am your other co-host, Salina Ahmed. There are a few ways for you, our audience, to participate in today's episode. First, you can join us by turning on your video and joining our video wall. You can use the chat to send us your thoughts or perspectives on what we're discussing today. Or lastly, you can share your thoughts on social media with the hashtag #YouthForClimateLive to participate in this global conversation. And just a little bit of housekeeping, if you would like to listen to the Italian live translation of this episode, you can also change the language below.
And if you missed last month's episode on innovation and entrepreneurship, you can watch it on our website, youthforclimate.live, or you can get a quick recap by reading the Lowdown blog. Episode 7's blog was written by climate activist Daniela Hurtado. If you're interested in being a guest writer for the Lowdown, send us a message in the chat.
I'm so excited to see so many faces here because today we will be talking about climate change adaptation, which must go hand in hand with mitigation efforts. We know that we need to do everything possible to reduce emissions, but scientists also tell us that even if we decrease our emissions dramatically today and in years to come, we'll still need to cope with the effects of the climate change we've already caused. What does that look like? Sea levels are rising, global temperatures are increasing, and weather patterns are becoming more unpredictable. And right now, we're not exactly prepared to meet these challenges.
That's right. And as the Secretary General pointed out in his State of the Planet speech last year, until now, adaptation represents only 20% of climate finance. Today, we'll be speaking with youth leaders who are pushing forward the adaptation agenda and discuss some of the barriers young people face in becoming equal partners in adaptation efforts.
But first, we're excited to hear from Inger Andersen, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program. Ms. Andersen, we'd love to welcome you to our stage. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Unmuting myself, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. So, Ms. Andersen, your agency released a report last week on the adaptation gap, or the difference between our current reality and the way we should be planning, financing, and implementing adaptation. What does this report tell us, especially about the need to prioritize adaptation finance, and how can we empower young people to be active partners in closing the adaptation gap?
Well, just because of what you both said, Ahmed and Salina, and thank you very, very much for doing this. It's really great, and you have such a wide audience. It's just amazing. So thank you also for inviting me. So first of all, what you were talking about is, even though we're doing the best that we can on climate mitigation, on reducing CO2 emissions, I just want to leave you with a few numbers, and now I'll go to your question, because it matters that we understand how we still need to stretch and why we need the young voice to push on COP26 and on the NDCs. If we do nothing, if we just live with what we committed to in Paris and looking at and we just continue as is, and on the projections, including the projections that we're seeing on the production gap, we will arrive at about 3.5 degrees if we're lucky, okay? If we do what we promise, we implement the full NDCs, then it gets between 3 degrees and 3.4. So actually not very much better. Then all these countries have made the net zero commitments. As you know, more than 126, 27 now have made that commitment. That's a fine thing. If that actually gets implemented, then we reach 2.7 degrees. So still not where we want to be, right? So then if the US, and thankfully President Biden has rejoined Paris, and in his election campaign material, he talked about net zero. So if the US comes in, we get to 2.5. So the point here is that even with all of this, we need more. And so while we need to talk about adaptation, we still need to decarbonize our economies, and we still need to adapt. Now, on the question, we issued the adaptation gap report. We have these 3 gap reports: the emissions gap report, the adaptation gap report, and the production gap report. The adaptation gap report, okay, so it says, yeah, the good news is that we have 72% of all countries, they actually have in place at least one planning dimension dealing with adaptation. So good, plans are good. But there is also this thing that the road to na-na-na is written with good intentions. So planning is not enough. What we need to do is to have the money for the planning. And actually, we say that about 50% of the countries have quite good plans. So great. But you will recall, I hope, Article 9 of the Paris Accord, paragraph 4. It says that mitigation funding and adaptation funding should be in balance, because there is an understanding that the adaptation cost is high, and that it is underfunded, because funding tends to go to hard infrastructure, things of that nature. And so when we look at mitigation funding, or in 17 and 18, it is $537 billion. That's good. We like it. It's fine. But when we look at adaptation funding, it's 30 billion. So there is a to-do item for those wealthy countries. And let's just remember that the G7, just those 7 countries, are responsible for 27% of all emissions. That's a quarter of all emissions by just 7 countries. And if we take the G20 countries, then we are at 78% of all emissions. So just these 20 countries, they have some homework to do. And so now, about what can young people do? Well, first of all, make sure that in the countries where you are, you influence. After all, you vote. Be mindful of what it stands for and engage yourself in political life. I don't say right or left or that, I say the green. And there are many governments that may be of the more conservative persuasion. Angela Merkel, the UK governments have a series of governments actually had really good climate agendas and been leaning in on some of these. And there are many, many others too. So the point here is engage. Secondly, actually, around 70% of greenhouse gas emissions come from what we do, our household related what food we buy, where it comes from, how long it has been transported, and our own transport, including air, obviously. So our own footprint. But then when it comes to real on the ground adaptation, and thank you for that brilliant movie that you showed just before, I think this is where real good engagement at the ground level, listening to communities, understanding what they need. Don't come with solutions from outside. Listen to communities and understand what have been the traditional practices before these things set in, before climate change. Understand what was happening before, understand local ecology, support local communities, support local NGOs and community mobilization. That's the best thing. And if you're studying in school, and if you're in engineering school, challenge your professors to learn about nature's infrastructure. It's not only hard infrastructure, the steel and concrete, it's also the trees and the mangroves and the coastal forests, the estuaries, the kelp forests, all of that protects us. So that's my quick response. I'm afraid I've probably gone too long. I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a thoughtful response, and also just setting the stage for the rest of this conversation. I think as we dig deeper and deeper, we need to know what the stakes are, and especially not just with the adaptation gap, which you so eloquently described, but the gap between just the funding between mitigation and adaptation. You know, again, these are all very, very big picture, issues that we need to get right before we can kind of dig deeper and deeper and figure out our own plan. So thank you very much. We're so lucky to have you here.
Yeah, and next we're very excited to welcome to the stage Jean-Francois Clervoy, a French engineer and an astronaut. Hello, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, very nice to be there. Thank you, Salina Ahmed, and very pleased also to join Inger and willing to share with you. So don't be surprised with my astronaut nickname, Billy Bob. I'm Jean-François, yes.
Perfect. I'm really excited for this conversation because as someone who has seen Earth from outer space as part of 3 NASA Space Shuttle missions, you have such a unique perspective on the fragility of our planet. Can you tell us about your view of the Earth and how you think we should approach an existential threat like climate change?
Okay, first I would like to address the word fragility of Earth, because I think it doesn't describe correctly what we see from space. When you see hurricanes, thunderstorms, volcanoes, you see Earth is powerful, and there is no doubt Earth will survive us. Earth has its own tectonic, volcanic, climatic, geological and cosmic life. Sometimes you see impacts left by big asteroids long time ago. Earth is in the cosmos, and sometimes we have impacts of asteroids. What is fragile actually is not Earth, it's life on Earth. So if we want to be precise, when you look at the thickness of the layer of gas, we see it on the side, on the horizon. When we look at the atmosphere, we see the atmosphere from a side. And then we realize, compared to the size of planet Earth, that layer of gas we call atmosphere is extremely thin. And that makes us feel the fragility of life, which depends on this layer of atmosphere, which is in balance with the ocean and a lot of living elements like forest, etc. So what is fragile is life on Earth. Now, the second thing I would like to say to answer more directly your question is when you look at Earth from space, you see with your own eyes, although you know it before, but you really take ownership of this reality that Earth is finite. It is unique. Nothing resembles the Earth around. It is isolated. You don't see stars from space because the eyes are not adapted. We need to switch off all the lights in the cockpit, which is normally forbidden. So with the Earth, the sun, the moon, nothing else. It seems there is only Earth in the universe as a planet around a star. It is beautiful. It is beautiful because it houses life. This is life that makes Earth look so beautiful. When you see all the variety of turquoise colors in a phytoplankton blooming in a French Polynesia, in a North Arctic Ocean. It's beautiful, and you fall in love with your planet. And then you realize spontaneously that Earth is a spaceship in itself. And you can't avoid comparing Earth with our own spaceship. In space, we are the champion of anti-wasting. We don't waste at all. And we don't want to lack resources. We don't want to lack oxygen, water, electricity. So we are the champion of, recycling and consuming just exactly what we need. And if we would manage Earth as a spaceship, and that is possible if everybody on Earth considers himself, herself as a crew member, not a passenger waiting that somebody takes care of you. A crew member is someone who has a task on board, a role in the management of the whole spaceship. But Earth is a spaceship. The ocean is a main support of the life support system of Earth. It is a main producer of oxygen, absorber of carbon dioxide. It regulates the temperature, the humidity. It feeds half of the population, and it is in balance with the atmosphere. And you feel Earth, you can compare system by systems, Earth and our own spaceship. And to answer your question, yes, Earth is a spaceship. The life support system is very fragile. The life support system that maintains life on its surface and in the ocean. And we should protect that system. We should take care of that system. And of course, regardless human activity, Earth has been living extreme excess change in the past. Hyperglaciation, heating, super volcanoes, impact of big asteroids, which destroyed the dinosaurs. But if we accelerate, if we change this fragile balance, then we will destroy ourselves quicker than nature will do normally over a million years normally. So let's take care of our planet like a spaceship. Let's protect the resources. Let's not waste, and let's recycle.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful because you not only shared with us your perspective on Earth, but also giving us a roadmap a bit on how we can sustainably manage our planet and how we can take a little more responsibility on. And I love that analogy. So we're going to come back to this a bit more later. For those who want to become a crew member, we will have 3 incredible young leaders that we'll bring to the stage. But before we do that, we want to hear what our audience has to say with a quick poll. So to participate, please scan the QR code, you'll see it above, or click the link in the chat. And we would encourage all of our speakers to join in on this one as well.
And the question we have is, what sector in your country or region do you think is most vulnerable to climate change? First, we have agriculture and food, water security, human health, biodiversity and ecosystems, energy and transport, fisheries, vulnerable groups, or if there are others that are not on this list, please feel free to let us know what they are in the chat. Let's take a look at the results as they come in. Seems like agriculture and food is the most popular, though biodiversity and ecosystems is also catching up.
And vulnerable groups who I'm sure are affected by the agriculture and food, and so much of this is interconnected. But it's good to see the few that are rising to the top, because specificity sometimes is really important in figuring out how you want to make a change and where you can have the biggest impact. So it's nice to see this coming together.
Absolutely. And it seems like our top 2 at the moment, which seem to be the most popular, which are tied up just about neck and neck there, agriculture and food, and biodiversity and ecosystems. Again, these are both topics that will inevitably come up for the rest of the conversation. So let's keep them in mind as we continue.
Yeah, and the second question we have is a lot more specific. Still on your country, we want to know, does your country's nationally determined contribution, NDC, include, 1, an adaptation component that includes nature-based solutions? Does it include an adaptation component that does not include nature-based solutions? Does your country's NDC have no adaptation component? And lastly, you have I don't know as an answer if you're not really sure if it has any one of these. it looks like about half are not really sure if there is an adaptation component, whether that includes nature-based solutions. And that's really a huge invitation from us, because you can easily find this information in the recently released Adaptation Gap Report. And we would strongly recommend that you go in, if you don't know, after this conversation and figure out what your country's plan is and how you can then influence it to really take action. So thank you everyone for responding. And it looks like a quarter has an adaptation component that includes nature-based solutions, which means hopefully there's a really great plan in place. So I want us all to really take these two components, what is being impacted the most, and then what your country's plan is, in consideration as we move on to the rest of our conversation. So what we'd like to do now is to invite Ms. Andersen and Jean-François back to listen, and we want to introduce our panel of youth experts. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So first up, we have Satrio Wicaksono, who is a PhD scientist and environmentalist working as a forest and land use governance expert at the EU RED facility. We have Joyce Mendez, who is a social entrepreneur working on the water, energy, food nexus, and transboundary cooperation. And lastly, Joshua Amponsem, who is the founder of Green Africa Youth Organization and a youth fellow at the Global Center on Adaptation.
We'll be having a Q&A session at the end of our episode, and this will be your chance to contribute to this conversation. Just submit your questions through Menti by scanning the QR code on the screen, or just click the link in the chat. And don't forget to let us know which speaker the question is for. Get your questions in soon for a better chance of having them answered.
Perfect. So we want to dive right in. Satrio, we'd love to start with you. First of all, congratulations on being one of 3 winners of the Space for Youth essay competition organized by the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. For those who aren't familiar, young people from all over the world were asked to come up with ideas and examples from their communities to leverage space for sustainable development, Goal 13, climate action. You wrote about the use of space technology to combat deforestation, which has implications for both climate change mitigation and adaptation. So can you tell us about the ways young people are using space data to protect forests in Indonesia?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for the very generous introduction, Salina and Ahmed. And I'm very honored to be part of this important intergenerational discussion. And as was mentioned by Salina in my winning essay, I wrote about how young people in Indonesia are using space data to protect forests. And the competition itself was organized by UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, or UNOSA. And one of the programs that UNOSA has is called Space for Youth, which provides a platform for young people worldwide to share their experiences and ideas for the space sector, especially in relation to sustainable development. And Space for Youth competition is held annually, and last year they held a competition focusing on the use of space data or space science to help address climate change. I wrote about how to empower youth from tropical, forest-rich countries like my home country, Indonesia, to help solve climate issues using space data or satellite images, to be exact. And this is a topic that is close to my heart because I was involved in such an effort when I was working at World Resources Institute, or WRI, Indonesia. So WRI, together with IASA, ICRAF, and WWF, launched a crowdsourcing or citizen science campaign using a mobile gaming app to help protect Indonesian rainforests. So university students from Indonesia are asked to play a game in which they have to observe and classify satellite images by the type of land cover that is visible in order to help validate land cover and land degradation maps. And some of these students are also asked to go to certain locations indicated in the satellite images and check the land cover in those particular areas. So this is kind of like if you play Pokemon Go, you're asked to go to certain places. And there are a few reasons why we developed such a project. First, we hope that this crowdsourcing approach by the youth can create a more accurate land cover and land degradation maps, which will be useful for developing policies to stop deforestation and encourage forest and landscape restoration. And secondly, we hope that this game raises more awareness among the youth about the importance of Indonesian rainforests. And just like in many developing countries, Indonesia's population is quite young. In the long run, if you want to tackle deforestation in these tropical rainforest countries, we do need to include the youth. And we were able to do this project precisely because the space technology, especially remote sensing, has become more advanced over time. So it is now possible to monitor forest changes in high resolution across the entire globe. So for example, if we use the Google Earth engine, users actually can create scripts that make processing heavy geospatial data, for example, NASA's high-resolution satellite imageries, much faster and easier. And this advancement in remote sensing technology is also one of the reasons behind the success of the Global Forest Watch, or GFW. Using GFW, anyone is able to monitor tropical deforestation every few days and reveal, for example, unknown deforestation hotspots previously. So let me give you another example how youth in Indonesia use space data, especially using GFW data to protect forests. So a few years ago, Farwiza Farhan, a young lady from the Indonesian province of Aceh, founded an advocacy NGO that campaigned against deforestation and bring legal cases to the courts. So what they do is that Farwiza and her colleagues challenge companies which illegally log trees in the forest of Aceh. And how did she and her NGO get the data? She actually turned into Global Forest Watch database. So her team used GFW to quickly identify areas of likely deforestation and then send some personnel to patrol and to investigate what's actually going on and to take action accordingly. So I hope these examples I gave really show that youth in developing countries, when they are empowered, they can be a real catalyst for tackling climate challenges. And space data is a key tool for such empowerment. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's so fascinating to hear the different technologies that are available to us and how we can use them in a way that really we can take action in real time. And at the start of the episode, we asked, what aspect of adaptation and resilience is most interesting to you? And the audience, number one was nature-based solutions. And right up there was technological innovation. So I love that in this conversation, we're able to really blend these interests together and talk about what we can do really tangibly as young people. Thanks so much.
Now we'd like to turn to Joyce. Joyce, thanks for joining us. You've been doing such important work at the grassroots level at the border of Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina, particularly with a focus on biodiversity and transboundary cooperation. It's a mouthful. Can you tell us about the roles that young people in your region have played in organizing and supporting projects that build resilience? What has it been like to collaborate internationally, and what can young people from other regions learn from your work?
So, boa tarde, buenas tardes. Hello all, this is Joyce Mendez. I'm very happy to stay here. And well, just a little bit about myself. I came also from the astronomy areas. I was studying exoplanets, what makes planets habitable, into right now I'm studying traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge applied to resilience, to climate resilience. Well, yeah, I'm gonna tell you like a little bit how I came to develop several grassroots movements. So basically back in 2014 in university, I realized there were not collectives, so youth organizations regarding climate actions in my region. And because it's a transboundary region, we obviously had climate change that doesn't have borders. So we wanted to include the Paraguayan and the Brazilian youth. So we came up with this idea of this collective, a binational collective. We were working in capacity building, first of all, but we realized that if we really want to have like direct influence in our communities, we needed data. And afterwards, we needed to have public policies applied to our land management as well and to the needs of our community. So with some professors and some of that youth from that collective, we created the Foz do Iguaçu educative, and environmental observatory. Within in a framework of a public university, which is the Latin American University for Federal Integration, UNILA. So basically we thought, okay, one of our main areas is climate change, but we were like, whenever we started developing data on the needs of the community through participative methodologies like for example, coffee talks, or as well as social cartography, we realized that climate adaptation was one of the main priorities for the communities. So we came to partner up with projects like with the University of Leeds, a project called Triangle City Cooperation, and the idea was to identify strategies that the the Triangle City cities like the Foz do Iguaçu, Ciudad del Este, and Puerto Iguaçu, the bordering cities have, and how they can cooperate each other, fostering and as well making it more efficient, this climate action. It was very interesting. Youth were the main resources as well, mobilizers. However, we wanted to have more applied action. So one of our biggest achievements have been to have co-created the Foz do Iguaçu municipal plan for the Atlantic forest. So the Atlantic forest is one of the main forests and biomes in Brazil. However, in our region was not protected. We have a national law, but we didn't have it applied at a local level. So we made this connection through research and as well using satellite data as well. And basically what we made is a framework guaranteeing the process for recovering of this biome and accessing for national and international funding for the protection, thus strengthening as well social organizations and citizen participation into public policies. So this has been like the main perspective. And to answer your question, well, basically we have been researchers, mobilizers, but the word that I love to use is catalyst. We have catalyzed the climate adaptation process in our region, working transboundary, working in that intercultural and multicultural perspective as well. And as well in the intergenerational approach, I just want to point out that basically this organization, we have youth from 10 different countries from Latin America, and we are migrant youth. We were not born there, and we actually started to use different intercultural approaches to make this climate action happen. So what I also want to share is that maybe like we didn't have any funding at the beginning, but with the organizations we had, we started growing, asking, involving a lot of stakeholders. So guys, we have kind of gave a new meaning what climate action means for youth. So I invite you to talk and to learn a little bit more about this. And that's what our next colleague is going to talk and how to learn and leverage as well climate adaptation knowledge. Thank you. Obrigada. Aguye.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for your amazing energy, and of course for your remarkable points. Climate change doesn't have borders. Such an important statement. Thank you so much for setting the stage in that way as well. I don't think we talk enough about transboundary interventions and the need to kind of mobilize collective action in this regard. And when we talk about the importance of collective action, as you discuss it and how we can use data and apply that data to transforming public policy, you're not just talking about this in the abstract. This is something that you've already done and something that you will continue to do in a remarkable way. So thank you so much, Joyce.
And lastly, we would like to bring on Joshua. Welcome to the stage. You are a busy man today because you have played a key role in the organization of the Youth for Climate Adaptation Conference, which happened today, and other efforts to grow the network of young people working on adaptation. Can you tell us more about your efforts? What keeps you motivated? And what are the barriers that you're finding young people are facing?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and very pleased that I could have this platform with very significant people like Inger Andersen and also with Jean, who have seen the world from afar. And I could actually listen to you all day because I think these are unique experiences that you don't get someone talking to you directly. Of course, we can watch documentaries and all that, but to have you sitting there talking to us, this is amazing and fantastic. So thank you very much for making this possible. To start with, in terms of what keeps me motivated, I will start by saying that what keeps me motivated to work on adaptation is my family, my relatives who are living in a village, and I know that no amount of flight reduction or eating less meat will do anything to transform their situation over the next 10 years. And I say that very bluntly because the highlight on mitigation have been extremely enormous and has been very corporate. And that is not going to protect lives and secure communities who are going through the floods and the droughts and extreme heat waves. So this becomes very essential. It's about the number of times a girl could miss school because they have to walk 3 kilometers to get water. And that missing school translates into a lifetime impact on their life and the kind of career and future they have ahead of them. This is what really keeps me motivated, in conjunction with when I meet people like Joyce and Satrio, who, regardless of their background, have extreme motivation and dedication to make things work. And to realize that not everyone get that opportunity, and a lot of money goes into mitigation, a lot of money goes into greenwashing, of course, a lot of planting trees, which we never see the trees grow, a lot of stories happening around the world, which makes us look like we're making progress. But I'll borrow the Inger Andersen's word, like even if we make it to what, 2.5, 3.0 degrees Celsius, we are still in a big mess. And that big mess means that it's not, of course, again, proportionately distributed. It means some are going to suffer quite tremendously. And I'm currently spent the last 8 months to 10 months working on Cyclone Idai and how young people survived and went through Cyclone Idai. And their stories are remarkable. I mean, these are very important, and this is what makes adaptation very, very critical for investment, for exchange of skills, training, professional development opportunities, to make it really possible for young people to get the skills they need, the education they need. Again, the education they need, because if I look at our education system right now, excuse me to say, it's really, really messed up. We have a future ahead of us, which is very uncertain. We're still learning theories of the past, and we are not futuristic at all in our education system. And this is another big problem that we are faced with. Today, we launched this document called the Global Call to Action on Adaptation by young people around the world. This was done through consultations with over 15 youth-led organizations around the world. And in this call to action, we are really calling for investment into universal education on climate change, but particularly on adaptation, because adaptation is needed now. It cannot wait because the impacts are here. So while we make projections and countries making net zero commitments, great, amazing. What about the person who is suffering from Cyclone Amphan in South Asia? What about those who are suffering from Central West floods in Sudan? These are essential. We need those commitments to go in right now. So this is really important. And for young people who wants to really get involved, they need the spaces. How many internship opportunities are really paying young people, giving them professional skills, and not making them run photocopies in the offices? How many internship programs are really putting young people forward such that they really learn from the best and are able to fill the shoes when leaders of today are gone? So these are really things that organizations need to change their system, have a transformative approach of bringing young people in, giving them the knowledge they need to face the future that is ahead of them, because that future does not include the older people of today. They'll be gone. We will have a future ahead of us, and we need the skills to be able to go through that. So it's really a tremendous movement. And for every young person listening now, we've set up the Youth Adaptation Network. It's a very open community for every young person to get involved. If you look at the Global Call to Action on Adaptation, which was done with a lot of you who are online now, I know, it lays out concrete steps that needs to be done. And some of them are also things young people can do. For instance, there'll be now a launching of massive open online courses on nature-based solutions, on adaptation. Learn these things, increase your knowledge and your understanding on the topic so you're able to advocate rightly, and you are able to call corporates out when they greenwash themselves with giving funding to some organizations to plant trees somewhere and rob lands from local people. We need this understanding and this knowledge to really defend and ask just simply just a better future for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you for grounding us in sharing your motivation of, very simply, your family, the people who are being impacted right now, who will be for the next 10 years. And Ms. Andersen had kind of given us the picture of what we have if we even go 100% full speed ahead with country commitments. And I think it's important for us also as young people, and today maybe, to dig in a bit deeper, not only on the adaptation gap, but the gap in terms of young people and how we can engage. What are the barriers that young people are facing? How to make it more equitable, how to eradicate a lot of the privilege that's been built in and the barriers that prevent people and young people from really getting involved. So thank you to all of our youth speakers for your focus on equity, on local solutions. We are excited to continue this conversation further.
And in just a moment, we'll be moving into our Q&A segment. So if you haven't submitted your question yet, you can click on the Ask a Question button on Menti. Also, we want to thank all of your wonderful comments so far. A lot of them have been touching upon the interconnectedness of all of the issues that we're discussing. A member of our audience said, quote, "We must look at both individual and group contributions to integral and global solutions." I could not agree more. And Joshua, we have one of our member of our audience saying, "You're very right. Adaptation is needed now, and we can start by taking environment education into school curriculums, from primary schools to universities." It's a really, really important initiative, and something that I think, like you said, is so intersectional. It can reverberate across so many different sectors. So switching gears a little bit, as you all know, the Italian government is hosting an in-person Youth for Climate event this September. In person. I feel like I haven't said that in so long. The event will offer young people the opportunity to develop concrete proposals for both pre-COP26 in Milan and COP26 in Glasgow. The first 2 days will be dedicated to working groups, and the last day to a discussion between the young delegates and the ministers attending the pre-COP26. Anyone between the ages of 15 and 29 can apply to attend. Tickets will be fully funded by the Italian government. The application opens on February 1st, so here very soon. Please keep an eye on our social media accounts for more details. And there is one other way to earn a ticket to the Youth for Climate event in Milan, the SumItUp competition. This is a chance to show us your creative side by summing up your favorite Youth for Climate live episode in a 1-minute video, or by presenting your key takeaways in a visual way. One winner will be selected to attend and participate in the event next year. Find out more by clicking on the link in the chat. And now, I think it's time to move into our Q&A. Salina, you've been looking through our audience questions. Shall we jump right in?
Yeah, I think we can. Thank you, everyone, for such great questions. And to get us started, Ms. Andersen and Jean-François, we'd love to give you a brief opportunity to share any reflections or questions you might have after hearing from our young experts. Ms. Andersen, the floor is yours.
Well, let me just say that with the experts like those three that we have before us here, I feel always the same as what I feel whenever I'm with young people. I feel a sense of relief that the world that my generation has messed up for you, that there are people like yourself who are stepping up, stepping in and fixing stuff. And so I just want to really thank you. Joshua, I loved what you said about the education system being broken. I think that that's precisely right. We need to be much more looking into the future, projecting what we know will come, and teach kids from the get-go about climate, about the earth. And can I just reflect on what we heard from Joyce? Because Joyce is in a microcosm. By the way, the Atlantic forest is a biodiversity hotspot where we have the jaguar, which is about to go extinct. There are only 300 of them left. So bravo to you, Joyce. But what she's doing is she's putting multilateralism to work. And that's the point here. If one person has COVID, we all have COVID. If one person has climate change, we all have climate change. We can only solve this together. And what we heard from Satrio, about using data, it was just superb. So I don't want to ask you questions because I think that what you said was so wise. And I just salute you. And I am so thankful that there are people like you. I'd love to have more time. Maybe in that in-person September thing, we can do something else because that your work really, really matters. And can I just say that when I heard Jean-François, it was like listening to poetry. You know, we need that voice, that person who has been seeing something from out there. None of us have. But that wisdom that comes with that vision is something that we all need to understand. I'll stop here because I know we're short of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Jean-François, what about you?
Well, I think the best I can say is that I would love to take those young people in space. They would be excellent astronauts for several reasons, because they have the spirit of problem solvers. You know, when you are selected as an astronaut, you are trained to be a problem solver. You will not complain about a problem, but as soon as a failure comes or a problem, you think, you focus on finding the solution. And this is what you are, this young generation, people like you, focusing on the solution. And you are engaged. That means you don't count your effort, intellectual and physical, to make it happen. And you all commit to the common goal. You know, astronauts, they have a mission. For each mission, we have a very precise goal. For example, for my third space flight, it was repair the Hubble Space Telescope. It fits in one sentence. And when people like you have one goal and you attract people around you to focus on that same goal, it's good. This is typically the spirit we have in space exploration. You are, as crew member of planet Earth, spaceship Earth, you have this mission, and you can translate and transmit and educate. Education is very important. So when I hear you speak like astronaut when they talk about their mission. So it's, you know, in our case, our training is focusing like 70% on prevention. We don't wait until we have to cure a problem. We are first focusing on prevention, what you call also adaptation. We need to adapt early enough. We don't wait for big problems to happen to think, oh, what should we do? And with people like you thinking of all possible solutions to all possible problems linked to climate change, which is, like you said, a problem for all of us, we will succeed. So thanks to people like you, we have a spaceship that can take humankind very far in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the thoughtful reflections. I mean, this conversation is just brimming with beauty, poetry, as Ms. Andersen said, and we're just so excited to have you all here. You know, we talked about the SumItUp competition where you can get a ticket to the event in September, but I don't know, Jean-François, maybe we need to have a competition for tickets to space, you know? Maybe that's the next thing. I don't know if we can work that out. We can talk after. We can move on now to the Q&A. Our first question is to you, Joshua, and is about youth representation and the NDCs. And the question is, with so many events lined up for COP26, we still come short in the NDCs. Most parties voluntarily highlight the role of youth. And so how can we better integrate youth formally into the NDCs?
Thank you very much. In terms of formal integration, I mean, I've spent almost 10 months consulting with young people, and I did this consultation regionally. And I did that because I had to acknowledge that every region of the world has a culture, and that culture have an effect on how governments interact with young people. And what I've also realized is that most young people then either try to mimic a particular trend or a particular format of either way of engagement in their local situation, and that makes it difficult for engagement. So let me just give that disclaimer to say that one of the first things I recommend is to look at what really works at the local level, because we must admit we are not the first generation of youth who are calling for something to be done. They have been youth, they had always advocated, and there's always going to be a trend of how cultures grow, develop, transform to accept what demands young people are putting forward. So let's try to understand what works culturally. I know in my country, Ghana, we've done tremendous work in terms of stopping some non-environmental or non-sustainable ways of doing things. And this was done in a combination of protest, but also significantly by dialogue. We were not going to get anywhere with protest. It was a combination of dialogue and making sure that we are speaking the language that works in policy formulation. And I remember at COP25 in Madrid, one of the ministers said, what exactly do you want? Because if you say climate action now, I don't really understand that. Can you break it down for me? Part of that is that we need to increase our knowledge and speak the language they speak. The other part is also that these ministers and political decision makers need to also up their game a little bit to understand what we mean. So that two-way affair is very important. But for now, because I'm talking to young people, I would say that let's try to understand how the system works to beat the system. Thank you.
I love that. The next question we have goes to Satrio. And for everyone, please, if you can make your comments very brief as we're running out of time. This question is from Jeremy. He says, Salam, Sajahtara. My question is to Satrio. Is it possible to expand your work to other countries?
Yeah, I think it's totally possible. I mean, the thing is that space data nowadays, they are made freely. For example, the government of Norway recently, like a few months ago, actually made an announcement that they actually collaborate with certain companies that are in charge of some of these satellites actually to make satellite data free for everyone to use. And this is not just one example. There are other examples like that. Global Forest Watch that I was mentioning to you, I mean, it has been working to process NASA's data into something that is more accessible to all. And just another example, recently I was reading about Global Mangrove Watch, and we know that mangrove is an important ecosystem, not just for mitigation, but also for adaptation, to prepare and to improve resiliency against tropical storms, as well as sea level rise. And so all these platforms are available. I think what we did in the Urun Data project, the crowdsourcing project that I was telling you, was actually using some of those data. And then if you have like people who are an expert in remote sensing, and they know how to utilize those data for particular areas, for particular ecosystems, so that you can monitor those ecosystems, then you have those powerful data. And I think as youth, I think in every country, I mean, then you can utilize those data. I think this needs collaboration. You need technical expertise, and also like people who can communicate what the data means, so that it can be used for the climate and adaptation and mitigation efforts. And I think it does require collaboration, and I think all youth everywhere can utilize innovative technologies such as space data for that purpose.
Thank you so much, Satrio. Our next question is to Joyce. Joyce, the question is, we are a new organization dedicated to repairing environmental biomes damaged by human activity. What strategies can you recommend to grow our connections?
Yes, so basically, as I work with grassroots movements, I would recommend like doing partnerships with a lot. Like, you don't need to create the wheel or to create or start from scratch. You need to see the structures that already are there and working. I don't know, universities also, do you have collective? Not just has to be related with the environment. What about education? What about even in faith groups and so, because it's a matter for all of us. So you need to see these structures that are already there, that they have, like, for example, will they help you with communication, with marketing? Even if you work with volunteers and youth command, you're gonna need to have some food and have coffee break. That was fundamental. So maybe will you talk as well to the local government to support you with that, with the transportation as well. So everybody can contribute. And as well, maybe why don't you think into a decentralized logic as well? Sometimes it does help to accelerate action and to bring a creativity and as well as different sectors. So instead of having a vertical organization, maybe a more horizontal, decentralized, that will work pretty much good. And if you as well don't have like you have different peoples from the cultures, make sure as well you make available the communication in different languages, and bring as well this logic in how to bring youth to work. It doesn't have to be all the time like informal and formal and following certain patterns. Allow their creativity, allow the members, and listen to people, listen to the community. So check out participatory methodologies. They will help you about understanding how to integrate more the community and the local actors into your project. And for sure, it's going to be a success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for the valuable advice. And thank you all for the thoughtful questions. And thank you to our speakers for the thoughtful answers. As we close this session, I'd like to ask all of our speakers very briefly in one word, how would you sum up this discussion? And what would you like to leave our audience with today? Joshua, you want to get us started?
Well, the only word that came out today from the whole day is action. Just action, and let's do it. We can, so let's do it.
Joyce?
Yeah, I really like this perspective of multilateralism. So no matter who you are, you need to work with about climate adaptation. It's our responsibility if you're an Earthling. So Mr. Astronaut, he said, we all are from this spaceship. So it's our responsibility, multilateralism.
Absolutely. Satrio?
I would say encouraging. And I think this is because everyone shows with clear examples and everyone reflects on the power of youth in tackling climate change. So it's very encouraging. And one point I want to emphasize is that when used effectively, innovative technology, including space technology, can really amplify and accelerate that power of youth.
Thank you so much, Satrio. Jean-François?
You know, when we see our spaceship the first time, it's just a piece of metal. But by the time we have trained, qualified, and go to space, our spaceship is part of us, and we feel we are part of it. And what you describe in your various programs is this harmony you're looking for between you and the diversity of life around. And this is what we should all aim for. We are not just humans, and there is nature and Earth. We are part of a living system. And looking for harmony is the best way to survive in the long run, whether it is spaceship Earth or spaceship in space when we are in orbit.
Thank you very much. And last and certainly not least, Ms. Andersen.
Look, I was thinking when I'm hearing everyone here, and I mean everyone, including the two of you moderators, I think that I come away, and you've got to give me two words. One is that you are all inspirational. And so I subscribe to all of your words, but you are all inspirational. And that gives me hope because we can do this exactly as Josh was saying. We can do it. Let's just roll up our sleeves and get the damn thing done and not talk about brackets and complications. Let's get this done already. It's high time. Thank you very much.
Beautifully put. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions, your commitment, the work you're doing. We appreciate you being part of this journey with us. And there was a last question that I just want to reflect on. Someone had asked, is there any age to contribute to the climate change crisis? I think I might be too young. How can I still help? And I see everyone saying no. No matter what age, you have a sphere of influence. Think about how you can utilize it. How can you influence your family, your parents? You know, Joshua mentioned the education system. How can you prepare yourself and educate yourself? You know, what crazy ideas do you have? What friends can you bring on to start that organization? So there is no age limit requirement, just a whole lot of energy and hope, I think. So thank you, everyone, for answering the questions that we had. And we look forward to having you back another time, seeing you soon. I personally found this conversation incredibly eye-opening, and there's so many ideas coming to my mind already. And I'd love it if we brought this energy to social media. So let us know what you thought about this episode, what you thought about the work and the examples that were shared today. And if we didn't get to your questions, feel free to ask our speakers online. You can check out the chat for all of their handles, and they'll be dedicating some time to answer specifically to you.
And if you want to dive deeper into this topic, you can download the Youth for Climate Live Educational Toolkit, which has lots of resources to explore the different themes we discuss in each episode. You can follow the link in the chat for more information.
And if you're inspired to learn more, you can also tune in to the Climate Adaptation Summit on Monday, when global leaders and local stakeholders will convene to discuss adaptation and launch a comprehensive adaptation action agenda. So you can follow along at cas2021.com.
And as we mentioned last month, along with the pre-COP, Italy will host All for Climate this year, a program of events happening across the country to promote 2021 as the year of climate ambition. If you're tuning in from Italy today and want to find out more, click on the link in the chat.
And before we go, we want to recognize our hosts. Thank you to the Italian Ministry for Environment, Land and Sea, to the World Bank's Group's Connect for Climate program, and the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. Please do follow them on social to stay updated about all things Youth for Climate Live.
Our last episode will be next month. I can't believe I'm saying that. Please join us on February 26th for a conversation on driving local action. You can find out more, again, always at youthforclimate.live, and you can register now for that final session next month. And don't forget to submit your application or SumItUp creative contribution for a chance to attend the Youth for Climate in-person event this September in Milan. Now, please turn on your video to say goodbye. We'll see you back here for the last and final episode next month.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.